In the My Hero Academia manga, as of chapter 299, we are currently witnessing the aftermath of the Paranormal Liberation War arc, which first began back in chapter 253 of the manga, and with all the sad, hype, and shocking moments and reveals that came out of this insanely wild arc, I figured for today's video we will be going over the top 17 WTF moments and reveals that went down in the Paranormal Liberation War arc. And don't forget to let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought was the craziest thing that happened in this arc. Quick side note though, the list will be going in chronological order of when they happened from the beginning to end of the arc. Also, before I get into today's video, if you are new to the channel, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on if you haven't done so already. That way you never miss an upload. And don't forget to plus ultra Detroit smash that like button below if you enjoy anything in today's video. With that said, let's get into today's list. Now, to start things off, we first have the reveal of Kurogiris' true identity. So, Kurogiris' true identity was revealed to be none other than Izawa and Present Mike's dead high school classmate and best friend, Shirakumo, who was turned into a Nomu by Dr. Ujiko and All for One and was given the new identity of Kurogiri. Now, we had previously seen Shirakumo and his death go down in Izawa's backstory, which was given to us in the My Hero Academia spin-off Vigilantes a little before this reveal had happened. So honestly, if you haven't read Vigilantes, I heavily suggest reading it, since it does tie heavily with a lot of the things we see in the My Hero Academia story. And without reading Vigilantes and fully knowing the details on Izawa and Present Mike's relationship with Shirakumo and what had happened to Shirakumo, this reveal wouldn't have been as impactful as it was if not for reading Vigilantes. Next on the list is Murko versus 4 high-end Nomu. Murko versus the 4 high-end Nomus was probably one of the most epic fights that went down so far in the series. She was able to hold her own against 4 high-end Nomu, which is no small feat since one of these Nomus had almost killed Endeavor back during the Pro Hero arc. She was able to quickly take down a Nomu by tearing off its head with her thighs, which, to be honest, I wouldn't mind going out that way if it was Murko doing it to me, cause them thighs, they thick. Now, even though she wasn't able to defeat all of them and took on some heavy damage, losing her arm in the process, she never not once lost sight of the mission to stop the awakening of Shigaraki. And not only that, throughout the majority of that fight, she faced danger with a smile, which was pretty badass. Next up is the death of Twice. This one really is heartbreaking since we really see that Twice honestly cares a lot for the League members, feeling responsible for not only being fooled by the kindness of Hawks, trusting him and causing this big mess, but for also being fooled by Overhaul and getting Magni killed and causing the loss of Mr. Compress's arm back during the Shei Hasaikai arc. So to try and make up for being fooled by Hawks, he was going to try and escape from Hawks in order to help and become of use to his teammates and hopefully help turn the tide of this war in the villain's favor. But as Twice desperately tried to make his escape to go and help his friends, Hawks quite literally and figuratively stabs Twice in the back, killing him. Now, a clone of Twice does make it to the rescue of Toga and Mr. Compress, saving them, but sadly the Twice double had taken too much damage from falling from a high height. So as the clone melts away in Toga's arm, Toga and Twice have one last heart-to-heart, and after this he fully melts away in her arms, revealing to the rest of the League that he had died. Next, we have Shigaraki's Awakening. This was probably one of the craziest things that happened. Before Dr. Ujiko could awaken Shigaraki, the vat that was keeping Shigaraki alive in a near-death state was destroyed and in turn had stopped Shigaraki's awakening and killed him in the process. For what seemed to be a successful attempt at stopping Shigaraki from awakening, turns out that the heroes had failed, because due to Xless wanting to be extra safe, he decided to destroy a machine, not knowing that the machine had contained loads of quirk erasing bullets. So despite not knowing what the machine was, he did do some good in destroying a majority of the newly manufactured erasing bullets, but a destroyed cable was able to electrify the fluid that Shigaraki was laying in. What also makes Shigaraki's awakening even more crazy is that the cable that shocked the puddle that he was in wasn't what brought him back to life. His hatred and his dream is what really brought him back to life in that moment, which is insane. When he wakes up, the first words that come out of his mouth is, "I'm cold," and literally right after he completely decays the entirety of Jakku Hospital, including a big part of the city, killing tons of heroes, including Xless, who was literally right next to Shigaraki when he woke up, and the number 6 top pro hero, Crust, who sacrificed himself to save Izawa from being decayed. The complete destruction that Shigaraki had caused in his awakening was terrifyingly awesome, to say the least, and had me at a loss for words when seeing how much death and destruction was caused in his awakening. Next we have Machia versus Kirishima. So as Machia was making his way to Shigaraki, Momo was put in charge by midnight. So Momo came up with a plan to give Machia a sedative to put him to sleep. When Machia got closer, Mina went full on Acid Man to try and give Machia the sedative that Momo created. Mina had recognized Machia from back when she was in middle school, and she completely froze up in fear. As Machia was about to hit her, Kirishima comes in for the rescue, saving Mina from a hit that could have possibly killed her, and taking on that full blow for himself, as well as simultaneously taking her sedative. Kirishima, after taking the hit, climbs up Machia's arm and throws a sedative, which is destroyed by Toga, but thanks to Kirishima's quick thinking in grabbing Mina's sedative, he quickly chucks that into Machia's mouth, successfully administering a dose of the sedative. This was a big moment for Kirishima, since it really shows how much he has grown from the kid who couldn't even move a muscle to save the girls from Machia back in middle school, to a man who dove headfirst to save Mina from Machia years later, truly overcoming his fear and living up to his name, Red Riot. Next, we have Shigaraki versus everyone. So I decided to put all of Shigaraki's fights in this one moment because literally they all happen back to back until it's just him and Deku who are able to fight. So right after Shigaraki had awakened and everything was done being decayed, Endeavor comes right in and fights Shigaraki, which was really crazy because at this point Izawa had not yet arrived to put a halt on Shigaraki's quirks, so Endeavor at any point during that fight could have easily turned to dust if Shigaraki had grabbed him. Luckily for Endeavor though, Shigaraki put more of his focus on locating One For All and heading to steal One For All away from Deku. After a bit of a chase, Gran Torino comes seemingly out of nowhere and saves Deku and Bakugo from certain death by Shigaraki. And right after the save, we see Ryukyu, Rocklock, Manuel, and the Dry Eye God himself, Izawa, arrive as well to help in the fight against Shigaraki. Now at this point, with the arrival of Izawa, Shigaraki's quirks are put at a halt, meaning he can't use them. But Shigaraki still posed a huge threat even without his quirks due to all the enhancements that were done on his body by Dr. Ujiko. Here we get another fight between Endeavor and Shigaraki, where this time Shigaraki just completely washes Endeavor and even mocks Endeavor by doing his victory pose that he did back in Kyushu after defeating the Hood, High, and Nomu, which was incredibly disrespectful. After this, pretty much every hero who wasn't Manuel, Rocklock, Izawa, and Ryukyu joined in to fight against a quirkless Shigaraki, who was now targeting Izawa so that way he could put an end to Izawa's eraser. This part of the fight was awesome because Deku, Bakugo, Endeavor, and Gran Torino all get some really good hits in on Shigaraki, keeping him away from Izawa while also doing some serious damage to him. But of course, things sort of go downhill from there, and you'll see why soon. Because next, we have Izawa. Now, while all the heroes were preventing Shigaraki from reaching Izawa, they were not aware that Shigaraki had taken a quirk erasing bullet when he had first awakened. So, right after putting down Gran Torino, Shigaraki dashes past our heroes towards Izawa. Shigaraki is then stopped by Ryukyu with his arm piercing through her hand. Deku immediately jumps on Shigaraki in an attempt to put an end to him, but that's when Shigaraki pulls out the quirk erasing bullet from his pocket, and with the hand that was through Ryukyu's hand, shoots it with an incredible amount of force that when it hits Izawa's leg, his leg does a complete 180, breaking it. Now this isn't even the crazy part, because right before Shigaraki shoots the drug, Ryukyu sees it and calls it out. So Izawa quickly understood what he was shot by, and with no hesitation, he takes out his knife and cuts off his own leg in order to stop the drug from spreading and erasing his quirk. Not only did this happen, Shigaraki escapes from the grasp of Ryukyu and Deku and ends up clawing out Izawa's right eye, officially taking Izawa out of the fight. Next we have Shigaraki versus Deku. So Shigaraki and Deku have been going at it for quite a while already, but in this particular moment it's mostly just Deku and Shigaraki fighting each other. And this part of the fight was insane because it all takes place in the air because of Deku using Nana Shimura's quirk, Float, and Deku is just completely owning Shigaraki. Keep in mind that Shigaraki does have Decay and All For One back at this point, and throughout that whole air battle, the only person damaging Deku was himself from him still not being able to use the full power of One For All yet. Now, Endeavor, being the boss that he is, grabs Shigaraki from the back, and hits him with a super close range prominence burn, basically burning Shigaraki to a crisp and almost killing Shigaraki if it weren't for All For One taking control of Shigaraki's body and using a quirk called Rivet Stab through his spine to stab Endeavor. All For One even tries to stab Deku with Rivet Stab, but Bakugo comes in and sacrifices himself to protect Deku. Seeing Bakugo get stabbed made Deku completely rage out, giving us Rage Deku. And man, Deku went completely savage mode and straight up biting through Shigaraki's Rivet Stab, but this didn't last long because Shigaraki finally got his hands on Deku and started the process of stealing One For All. Next on the list is the One For All world. Okay, so when Shigaraki finally got his hand on Deku to steal One For All away from him, they both enter into the One For All world, where the vestiges of the previous users of One For All remain. Shigaraki is seen attached to All For One, where All For One is trying to take control of Shigaraki's body. But since Shigaraki refuses to let All For One take full control over his body, they are unable to steal One For All away from Deku, and is only able to erode some of the One For All world through Shigaraki's hatred alone, even almost decaying All For One while doing so. Not only was it crazy to see All For One try and take control over Shigaraki's body, but we also learned that every quirk factor contains a consciousness, that being the individuality of its original wielder. And when someone who has the power to meddle with quirks, whether that be by stealing or passing down a quirk like All For One and One For All, you are able to interact with those consciousnesses. Even though we knew that with One For All you can interact with its previous users, it's interesting to know that All For One can do the same too, by interacting with the people he has stolen quirks from. Also, it was very heartwarming to see that the past users of One For All really believe in Deku. Alright, so get ready because the WTF moments coming up on this list right now are just straight up reveal after reveal after reveal. It's almost like Horikoshi in this arc was like, you know what, I'm going to reveal everything and leave no mystery behind. So next up on this crazy WTF moments list is Dobby revealing he is Toya Todoroki. Dobby finally makes the big reveal in chapter 290 that he is indeed a Todoroki, providing us a backstory and a whole DNA test to prove he is Endeavor's son. Like, Dobby straight up pulls up on Machia's back and whips out all the receipts on Endeavor. The reveal came as a shock to everyone, especially to Shoto and most importantly Endeavor, who was so shocked that the reveal just flat out broke him, leaving him standing in the same spot for almost 4 chapters straight. That man was shook. Dobby at the end of his reveal even uses Flash Fire Fist and Prominence Burn. Sadly, we don't get to see him fully use Prominence Burn, but the fact that he is capable of using these moves that Endeavor's currently teaching Shoto, then we can surely expect an epic fight to go down between the two Todoroki brothers sometime in a future arc. It was an extremely satisfying reveal, for me at least, and fun fact, Dobby's reveal outtrended the US election. It's like Dobby just didn't want to stop at breaking Hero Society, he also wanted to break the internet as well. Next reveal on the list is Best Jeanist being alive. As Dobby was about to unleash Prominence Burn, he is stopped by none other than Best Jeanist himself. It's later revealed in chapter 299 that the body that Dobby received from Hawks was actually Best Jeanist himself, but he was put in a near-death state where they thought he was actually dead. And the reason why Best Jeanist wasn't turned into a Nomu or anything was because Hawks managed to sneak his body back out before they could do any experimenting on his body. The grand entrance of Best Jeanist was actually very beneficial to the heroes, since he was able to hold Gigantomachia down long enough for the sedative that Momo's group gave him to take full effect, weakening him and rendering him unable to do anything for his master. The next big reveal on the list is the return of Melian. So Mirio makes his grand entrance yelling "Power" and protecting Best Jeanist from the Nomu. Here we find out that the day before the raid on the villa and the hospital, that Mirio had heard about the raid and wanted to help. Since Eri had been training using her quirk on bugs and lizards, Mirio asked Eri if she could rewind him back to a point where he had his quirk again. Thankfully, it worked out because now we know that Sir Night-Eye that whole time knew Mirio was going to get his quirk back, but he just didn't want to spoil us. The next big reveal on the list is Bakugo's hero name. In chapter 293, we finally get to find out what Bakugo's hero name is, and it is Dynamite, which is spelled in a way that includes the might in All Might, which pays homage to All Might himself. His hero name really symbolizes his growth throughout the series in many ways, and I honestly think it's the perfect hero name for him. The next reveal on the list is Mr. Compress's lineage. In chapter 294, right after the reveal of Bakugo's hero name, we get another reveal in Mr. Compress's lineage, with him being the descendant of Oji Harima. And Oji Harima was previously seen next to All For One and Destro back when Gentle Criminal was talking about the most infamous villains in history during the Culture Festival arc. Now, with the reveal that Mr. Compress is the descendant of Oji Harima, when you think about it, the Paranormal Liberation Front has some really big names associated with it, because now the Paranormal Liberation Front has the successor of All For One, the Lord of Evil, as their leader, that being Shigaraki. Destro, who himself is the descendant of Destro, who had originally started the Meta Liberation Army, which is now known as the Paranormal Liberation Front. Dobby, who is the son of the current #1 hero Endeavor, we'll see how long that lasts, and now Mr. Compress, who is the descendant of the peerless thief Oji Harima. Horikoshi literally did not let us breathe when he decided to throw all these reveals at us back to back to back. Next on the list is the villain's escape. After everything, after all this death and destruction, the villains still managed to make their escape, with All For One regaining control over Shigaraki's body, commanding the Nomu to gather up Shigaraki and the rest of the League to retreat in order to fight another day. Deku watches as they escape and says to himself that Shigaraki looked like he needed saving from All For One back when All For One was trying to take control over Shigaraki's body back in the One For All world. Now, I know a lot of people were confused by this, thinking that Shigaraki wanted to be saved and redeemed, but Shigaraki in that moment wanted to be freed from All For One taking control over him. That's why he looked like he needed help. This is meant to be a parallel to the beginning of the series, where despite not asking for it, Bakugo gave the look of needing to be saved when the sludge villain tried to take control over his body, and Shigaraki gave a similar look back in the One For All world. Next is the death of Midnight. In an attempt to put a rampaging Machia to sleep, she is hit by debris while in the air, and it critically injures her. As villains slowly approach her, she quickly makes contact with Momo Yaoyorozu and puts her in charge of putting Machia to sleep. Her last words to Momo were, "I trust your judgment." After this, she quickly turns towards her attackers, and this is the last we see of her being alive. In chapter 294, we see her body in a single panel, and in chapter 296, after the villains made their escape, we got a list of confirmed hero deaths, and at the top of that list was sadly Midnight, confirming that she had passed away. At least she went out fighting and died a heroic death. She will definitely be missed. Plus, seeing some of Class 1A, especially Momo Yaoyorozu, mourn over Midnight's death, it hits way harder. And finally, to top this list off, we have the Tartarus prison break. After the villains had made their escape, All For One, who had taken over Shigaraki's body, decided to head straight towards Tartarus to break his real body out of prison. All For One, being the complete savage that he is, living up to his name, being the Demon Lord, is able to break himself and everyone who was held in Tartarus out. Not only did he do that, but he attacked 7 other prisons in order to keep authorities from pursuing him, as well as the League. And he managed to free even more criminals from 6 out of those 7 prisons. And that's basically how the war arc ends, with All For One being loose and out into the world again, with our heroes taking a massive loss, losing tons of heroes and civilians' lives in the process, while failing to complete their mission in stopping Shigaraki's awakening, as well as losing society's trust in heroes. The villains, on the other hand, even though they took some big losses as well, they still managed to escape while also tearing down hero society. It's honestly hard to believe that all of these crazy moments and reveals all happened in one arc. And believe it or not, a lot more crazy stuff happened in this arc. So here are some honorable mentions, which are Deku using Float, Afro Deku, Deku gaining a new quirk that detects danger, which is a clear reference to Horikoshi's favorite Marvel superhero, Spider-Man, and his spider senses. Hawks' past, Gran Torino being stabbed through the chest by Shigaraki's arm. This would have made it onto the list only if he had died, but in chapter 298, he seems like he's actually going to be okay. Toga versus Uraraka, which was a disappointment if I'm going to be honest. And lastly, the deaths of Johnny and Mocha. Johnny, you will be missed. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on today's video and what was your favorite moment or moments that happened in the war arc. Mine was definitely the Dobby reveal. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button below and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you want to see more My Hero Academia content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on to join the Shobob's Hero Academia to become my hero. Doing all of this really does help the channel out a lot and it's always appreciated. You can also follow me on Twitter at Shobobs5 so we can talk more about My Hero and any other anime/manga all day long. Remember to stay plus ultra and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.